All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm good, Alan. I hope you and the family are doing well down there.
Oh, absolutely. Happy belated birthday to Archie Manning. He turned 75 on, I think it was Sunday. His birthday announcement came on Monday, but my memory on Facebook showed it was Sunday. So I'm going to go with Sunday. He turned 75 on Sunday. Um, I got one of his. This is what I put on X last this weekend. This is from 1977, Saints versus Bears. Archie actually had a great game that day. One of the three wins they had in '77, but he ran for three touchdowns and he threw one other touchdown. So it was a rout. It was 42-24, and Walter Payton was all the offense the Bears had, which is no big surprise. But
Yeah.
this Bears team, if I remember right, went to the playoffs in '77. I think they had to
Hmm.
play the Cowboys in Dallas in '77 and got killed. I'd have to go back and look that up and see for sure, but I'm almost positive that's what happened. But yeah, Walter was just on another planet. I mean, he
Yeah.
really is. You can see it. Um, Bob, the schedule came out Wednesday. I know you probably talked about it in the Bayou Blitz, but
hmm
what are your first impressions of this schedule and what the schedule makers did to the Saints?
I'll tell you, as we were getting the schedule leaks, throughout the day, and a lot of the leaks we were such and such a time. Uh, but yeah, I saw that the Packers were scheduled in December. So then saw that the Giants were scheduled in December, and then I was like, I was waiting for that Chiefs game, and I was like, yep, MF or Goodell is going to give the Saints Kansas City, New York, and Green Bay on the road in December. Now, instead that didn't happen. The Chiefs got scheduled for an early October, a Monday night against the defending Super Bowl champions. But two things really jumped out at me. I mean, everybody wants to say, the Saints are tied for the easiest strength of schedule in the NFL. A, I don't pay attention to that bullshit. B,
Mhm.
the reason that they are tied for the weakest strength of schedule is because they have two games against the Carolina Panthers, and two games against the Atlanta Falcons, who had double-digit losses, I believe. You take those four games out of the mix, and I would challenge. I would venture a guess that the Saints all of a sudden have the toughest 12 game. Sorry, I guess it'd be 13 game strength of schedule in the NFL. But again, I don't pay a lot of attention to that. A little bit ticked off at the two cold weather games. We all knew that the Sean Payton return would be a prime time game, but
Mhm.
I think the fact that it's a Thursday night and not a Sunday night or even a Monday night, and the fact that the Saints have zero Sunday night games, I think is a testament to how the league feels about the New Orleans Saints, and specifically the fact that the Saints don't have, at least according to Goodell and his goons, the Saints don't have any marketable players. Um, and I know we're going to talk about the murderers row, to begin the season. But yeah, those were the things that jumped out to me, as far as the schedule goes. That, and the fact that five of their six divisional games are in the first 10 weeks of the season, which means if Dennis Allen's crew plays poorly against the division again, then once again they're coming into late November, early December, needing to basically looking at a win out scenario and get some
Mhm.
help because you blew the opportunity that was you were holding right in your hands.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of the topics. Um, Cold weather game in Lambeau in December. I'm not that worried about that because actually I think the way this team is going to be built, they're going to be kind of built to be a cold weather team. I mean, we
Yeah.
talk a lot about running the football. That's running the football weather. The bye is not until week 12. They've got a stretch where they play 3 games in 10 days, which is also really tough. Um, I feel that the Saints have a real good shot of being 1-5, 2-4 to begin the season, just because of the level of competition they're playing. Philadelphia, Kansas City, Dallas to an extent. I'm not fearful of Dallas. I think we match up well with Dallas, but when you're trying to learn a new offense, week 2, that's a tough game to play. I kind of would like to have gotten Dallas more towards the middle of the season.
Yeah.
I would have even enjoyed playing Dallas on Thanksgiving, but I know that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
You know,
and like you said, you're working in a new offense. You're going with a rookie offensive tackle, and prospectively, a guy that got benched at tackle last year who could possibly even be playing a new position. You got those two guys going up against Micah Parsons, and then on the other side of the ball, you're facing in the first few weeks, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes. When you had no pass rush last year.
Yep.
And you're trying, you're hoping and praying that you're going to be able to manufacture a pass rush this year. That's just you put all those things in a blender, and it does not make a good mixed drink.
No, and I think that's probably the toughest part of this whole thing is, how we talked about last year, how they needed to get a good start, get the fans into it, get them interested. Well, this season, it's going to be very, very tough to get a good start and to get things rolling just because the level of teams you're playing against.
Yep.
And fans will turn against them pretty quickly with a slow start, wanting to bench Carr and put Rattler in and fire Allen and tank the whole season. But then here's the part that I see. After week 8, week 9, it's relatively easy. No game is easy in the NFL. I get that. But it's very likely that this becomes, once again, the Saints get on a roll, just like last year, win, 4 of the next 6 games, do all those kind of things, and the fans are going to go, oh, look, there he goes again. He just won to save his job. We finish, 8-9 or 7-10 or something ridiculous like that, because what did we see all this whole off season? Very conservative approach to free agency, a slow rebuild, soft rebuild, I should say, not a slow rebuild, but a soft rebuild. All the things that the fans will get mad about, that Allen will still be around. So it's a no-win schedule, and it really bothers me. It's a no-win schedule. I would have liked to have had something that you would have eased into, and then kind of build up the momentum from there. Play some of the harder teams later on in the year, but it's I wouldn't put it past 1-4. I think after Carolina, probably the only game I would feel confident in it possibly being a win is Saints Dallas, only because you're playing in the dome.
Falcons in week 4 too at Atlanta in week 4. I feel pretty good about.
Yeah. And as always, injuries are going to dictate the season too,
sure.
Especially as thin as they are. So it's a no-win schedule really for Allen. There's no other way for me to put it, because unless he starts off 4-1 or 5-0 against that level of competition, I just can't see anybody jumping on the Saints bandwagon. The stories will come out about the lack of interest in the in the Saints. The empty seats, the rival fan base being in the dome. You're going to see a lot of Chief fans, a lot of Eagles fans, Cowboys fans. But, the thing about the Cowboys fans, they're everywhere. They just crawl out of the sewers, when they think they got the team.
Yeah.
The 49ers and Cowboys fans are a lot alike.
Yes.
A lot more than they want to admit. But they crawl out of the sewers when their team is winning. When the team is losing, nobody claims the Cowboys. Nobody claims the 49ers. So it's hard. It's hard. And Allen has no margin with fans anymore. They can't. They're counting down the days for him to get fired. And as somebody who's lived through the dreaded mid-season firing and the whole interim coach and a lost season, it's a miserable way to live, and very rarely do you turn anything around and get better. Most of the time it's just a lost season, and then people they're waiting for the off season. And I'm sorry, I don't want football. I don't want my Saints season to be over before Halloween. That's no fun. That's no fun. I agree. The Falcons are going to be a little bit better on offense. I think. I think their defense is going to take a step back because they have no pass rushers, and their secondary is mediocre. So they probably become a shootout team. If you can shut down the run, you probably have a good shot of beating the Falcons. But the question is, can you shut down the run?
Yeah, and that's that is the big question with Atlanta. Atlanta has good run blockers on the offensive line, still can't pass protect, and playing a team with Kirk Cousins is twofold when you're New Orleans, especially. Kirk Cousins is never going to be a championship caliber quarterback. He's just not even close to it. However, Kirk Cousins seems to play at a Hall of Fame level nearly every single time he plays New Orleans. So, I think there's something to be said there. And like you said, Atlanta, I agree with you about taking a step back. And let's not forget they lost a hell of a defensive coordinator in Ryan Nielsen. Now, the hiring of Raheem Morris, a defensive coach, and you and I have compared him a lot to Dennis Allen, both good and bad. Raheem Morris is going to get that defense ready to play, but it's going to take a while for it to happen. Certainly longer than week 4 of this season, I think.
I was just looking at the schedule again. A couple of things. Denver on Thursday night. I kind of called that out last week on the show. I'm not surprised. I expect it to be a primetime game. I said it was either going to be a Thursday night game or a Monday night game because Sunday night's the premier broadcast, and of course the Saints aren't playing a single Sunday night game.
Right.
They are playing Monday night against the Chiefs, which that's going to be terrible. But playing Peyton on Thursday night, you play him. I was just looking, October 17th. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, week 7. Okay. By week 7, Bo Nix is probably the starter. I would be surprised if he's not starter by week 1, but regardless, he's probably the starter. Peyton, how do you? It's at home, so how do you think the fans are going to react to Sean Payton?
On social media, they're going to be a lot more critical than they will in the stands, I think, and that is usually the case. There'll be a smattering of boos. I expect the Saints franchise and the Superdome itself, to be full of video montages and video thank yous. And I think in the stands, there's going to be a lot more cheers than there will be boos for Sean Payton. I'm more worried about, Sean is the master of mind games, and Dennis Allen is a mental midget. So I very much give the coaching edge to Sean Payton coming into this one, especially on a short week. And this is another reason why I'm pissed at the schedule. You have the Chiefs on a Monday night, then the Buccaneers on a short week a physical divisional opponent where you're always going to get emotionally charged for, and then you bring in your former coach on a very short week.
Mhm.
What kind
Yeah.
of idiot? What kind of acid-induced idiot scheduled this?
Yeah, it's very tough because you've got, like you said, you play the Chiefs on Monday night in Kansas City. Um, you play the the Bucks at home Sunday, and then you turn around and play Denver at home on Thursday. Um, they had three games in 10 days just like this back in 1992, and the Saints went 3-0, including playing the defending Super Bowl champs, if memory serves. No, yeah, defending Super Bowl champs, 91. The Redskins won the Super Bowl in 91.
Yeah.
So you played Atlanta, you played Washington, and you played Miami in 3 games. They went 3-0. Mainly on the strength of the defense. The offense was not very good in those games. Here's a case where Kansas City, that's going to be a very tough game in Kansas City. I don't know how that's going to play out, what kind of game the Saints play
Yes,
against
you
that.
do.
Yeah. Well,
Yes, you do.
I expect them to lose, but at the same time, Kansas City could have an off night. I don't know. There were
Is
times last year.
Roger Goodell still the commissioner by week 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I don't.
So we know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah. No, I expect them to lose. I just don't know how ugly it's going to be. So then you play a divisional opponent, the team that you've got to beat to win the division, much less a team that you've got to beat if you're looking for postseason. If you're thinking about postseason at all, um, and then you play your former coach. If you play your butt off against the Bucks and it's the physical game that you're afraid of, then what happens? What kind of team comes out Thursday night to play the Saints and play the Broncos? I don't know. And to me, this is where I was really going with this. If at best you're 3-3, which means you beat Carolina, you beat Dallas, and you beat you beat Carolina, you beat Atlanta, and you beat Tampa. There's your 3 wins. Your 3 losses were Dallas, Philadelphia, and Kansas City. If that's your um if that's your record, 3-3, the crowd may be 50-50, cheering Peyton but booing him at the same time. But if you lose to Tampa or you lose to Atlanta and you only have 1 win, the crowd will get ugly really fast. So, that's a tough matchup. I mean, I don't like any of this. I really don't. I really, really don't. Then you have this stretch here, which I think is intriguing. You got the Cleveland Browns at home, a bye. You come back to play the Rams at home. Then you go to the Giants. Your next home game is against the Washington Commanders with former LSU quarterback, Jalen Daniels. If this team is, I don't know, if they only have 4 wins or 5 wins and Daniels comes in, it's going to be like Joe Burrow with Cincinnati. It's going to be all these Daniels jerseys in there, and it's just there's so much of the schedule I don't like, honestly. And then Allen doesn't even get his revenge game until December 3rd,
29th.
29th against the Raiders, and by that time he could be dead man walking.
Yeah.
I mean. And I don't think Allen gets fired this year, no matter what, unless this season just totally implodes. I don't know. I just everything Loomis said in the gum chewing press conference. I know a lot of fans didn't like it. A lot of fans are just like, what, Loomis has to go too. I just feel like that the Saints are giving Allen time to rebuild the team. They're going to treat this like a 7-9 season under Peyton.
Uh, if that's what it is, which obviously, with the extra game would translate into, 8-9, 9-8, even 7-10 if you have some good wins in those 7. I agree with you. I don't like it, but I agree that that's probably the case. But I mean, we're you and I are sitting here looking at this schedule and breaking it down in chunks like we usually do, and you can't tell me. I mean, we're both talking about the very real possibility that this season could go south and be essentially done by Halloween or certainly before Thanksgiving. And if that's the case, if you roll in with a 5-12 finish and you get swept by either the Buccaneers again or the Falcons, and you lose to Sean Payton at home, and you get embarrassed in all 3 of your primetime games again for the 3rd straight year, I think at that point, I think ownership would be absolutely idiotic to not make a move, because it's one thing to let your coach, Jeff Fisher it out, and pull in or mediocre records while you try to appease the fans with some new faces and new draft picks. It's another thing. I think if this team goes at a 5-12, and like I said, you get embarrassed in all 3 of your primetime games, get swept by a couple NFC South teams, lose to Sean Payton, I think that has to be the final straw. I really do. He won't get fired in mid-season, but he won't be back next year.
Well, and that's the thing too. The other thing people need to keep in mind, since the Bensons have bought the team, they've never fired a coach mid-season. Both Jim Moore and Bum Phillips, yeah, because I had to make sure. I knew there was 2. Bum, who was Benson's first coach, because he bought the team in '85, resigned. They didn't get fired. In fact, Bum was willing to resign in before week 1. He was willing to resign as soon as he bought the team. And Benson's like, no, I need somebody to teach me how this game is played. I need to know how to run a football team and everything else. And
that in itself is such a cool story, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And he had Bum stay on. My son's getting on me because I kept saying from the get-go, you got to move Penning to the right tackle to save him. So he's like, yeah, you're the only one saying that. And I'm like, it's just what they got.
He isn't. He wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it some more. But going back to Bum, Benson said, if you stay on and show me the business, how the business works, how do player contracts work, how does a draft work? I mean, you got to realize Benson didn't know anything about football. Bobby Hebert tells a story about he went out to his first practice, and the offense is wearing the black jerseys and the defense is wearing the white jerseys, and Benson makes a statement about, this is the problem with the team. Look, we're not united. They're in 2 different color jerseys, and it's like, no, Mr. Benson, you got to understand, this is offense, this is defense. Oh, okay. It's that level of knowledge. And say what you want about Edwin Edwards. I am not an Edwin Edwards fan at all, but Edwin Edwards was the one who got Tom Benson to buy the Saints, because it was a very real possibility they were going to move to Jacksonville, who had been trying to get a team since, the Baltimore days when the Colts were talking about moving. And they had a USFL team at the time, Jacksonville Bulls, and they folded in '85. So they were really interested in getting an NFL team. And John Meekum passed on the getting the Pricksters was the name of the family. Passed on their offer because it was less than what he wanted. Then when Edwards got involved, got Meekum to go down a little bit on the asking price. Cut Benson some side deals so Benson would be more agreeable, and got Benson in, basically bought the team. So he wasn't a football fan, didn't know anything about football. He used Bum to help him, and then sought some advice from people, some other owners, who is a good general manager. Jim Finks' name came up, and the rest was history. He hired Finks and then said, okay, now you hire the coach. You make these things. You do that. You run the show. I'm going to be the guy behind the scenes paying the bills and things, but you're going to run the football operation. And it's really why the Saints did what they did and won.
Yep.
It's truly amazing. It really is. And when Bum resigned really to give his son Wade a shot at coaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that was about. Otherwise, he would have stayed. He would have stayed on. So, I'd lost my train of thought. We were talking about one. So after Denver, this is where I wanted to go. After Denver, you play Carolina, Atlanta, and then Cleveland before you bye. To me, those are 4 winnable games.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be able to win those games. And if you can win those games, you're actually sitting in, and I'm saying best case scenario 3-3. You win the Denver game, and you win the bulk of these Chargers, Panthers, Falcons, then all of a sudden you're looking at, 6-4, 7-3 at that point. Going into your bye, you've got weak teams after that, the Giants, the Commanders, the Raiders. I mean, that's the key. You've got to survive the first 6 games, and then once you do that, you can kind of get the offense going. I mean, get this team going. But God, man, that's why I hate this first half of the schedule. It's just so murderous. And I think this is the first time since when did they start? Do you remember when they started putting the backloading all the divisional games at the end of the year?
I want to say 6-7 years ago. When they really started, maybe even a little bit longer than that. Because I think the Manning was still playing for the Indianapolis Colts, and the Colts would have the AFC East or South wrapped up 2 weeks after Thanksgiving and rest their starters for the last 3 games. So that's when Goodell started backloading the divisional games.
Yeah, so one of the things that surprises me, this is the first time since about that time, about maybe even 10 years ago now, the Saints only have 1 divisional game left, and that's the very last game at the end of the year. You're playing the Rams, Giants, Commanders, Packers, then Raiders the entire month of December. No divisional games. You are done with the majority of your divisional games before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You've played 5 divisional games before Thanksgiving. That was the other thing that was so unusual about this season, this upcoming season. I've never seen in my memory the divisional games aren't stacked at the end, and it's because, like you said, we didn't want another 13-game winning streak to start the season, and then they won the division, they blocked up 1 seed and start resting all the starters. They didn't want to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all the more, because of that, because of the way the schedule is set up, it's all the more critical that, I mean, it's always critical to win your divisional games. But Dennis Allen, just like everything else as a head coach, he's a very, very, very mediocre 6-6. Against the NFC South, 3-3 at home, 3-3 on the road. You do that this year, and you're going to be sitting at home again in January for the 4th straight season.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I've been looking at the schedule trying to think of some of the other things that caught my eye, but that was probably the biggest thing that caught my eye about the schedule. I mean, those are all beatable teams. I think the Giants have a very good chance of firing their coach, and that's an interim head coach coming in that one because they have not improved. They did not get the quarterback they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta getting Michael Penix really screwed up a lot of stuff. We might as well start talking about the OTAs. St. John Butler said, "Are we surprised that Pete chose not to come back?" There's a story Fox 8 is running right now saying that the Saints were interested in bringing him back, and he decided, he kind of ghosted Loomis. What is your take on that before I start on my rant?
If that's true, it's hilarious as hell. I think I don't know that the Saints so much wanted Pete back. I think that they took Pete for granted. Pete was like that drunken hookup that if you can't find anybody at the bar, that this guy is always, this person, is always going to be at home on a Friday night or a Saturday night, or if they're not at home, which bar they're at, and they're a sure slam dunk, if you'll pardon that pun. I'm pretty sure my wife is asleep, so I'm good. She don't watch my shows anyway, so as long as she doesn't hear what I have to say live, I'm safe.
Oh, wait till we hear what I got to say. So you're saying that Andres Pete is essentially should have played for Arkansas because you're hog hunting at the end of the night at the bar. I got you. All right, here we go. Continue.
But yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I equate it to. Is that they always viewed Pete as a fallback option. If they look at it this way, folks, if they truly wanted him, they would have, and I could see not even signing him before the draft. There are still a lot of good free agents out there, even as we speak tonight. But if you really wanted Andres Pete, you would have signed him within 48 hours after the draft. Or at least tried to get in contact with him. There is no indication that either of obviously they didn't sign him. There's no indication that they even attempted it. And it was either DA or Loomis that said, Andrus just decided he wanted a fresh start. No, Andrus wanted away from your ass. Because you showed zero to little interest in him. Even the drunken fallback hookup eventually grows tired of your shit and moves on with their life. That's what Andrus Pete did.
And to be honest with you, I think he was like you said, the drunken hookup. He was the last resort. I think if they offered him any money, it was because you think about what they did to him last year. They benched him. They made him take a pay cut. They chose not to re-sign him, taking the cap hit instead,
right?
Which they could have done by restructuring. To me, they had no interest really in bringing back Pete. I think they only would have brought back Pete if come week 1, they need a tackle, they go and get him because they think he's still on the street. They really wanted to move on past this. And a lot of this is what you talked about last week, about the change in the offensive line. I figured you would, John. Cesar Ruiz lost a bunch of weight and is quicker now. We're looking at a smaller, more mobile offensive line. Pete wasn't that kind of guy. he fit the old scheme where it was a big physical guy come out there and maul people. That's not the kind of offensive line they want to have right now. They want quicker, faster offensive linemen who are technique oriented.
Yep.
So that's why I feel like Pete wasn't really an option for them.
Yep, and that goes along. That goes right along with all the signings that they have had on the offensive line this offseason. Udo
Mhm.
played 3 years for Kubiak and Dennison. Lemieux played in a zone blocking scheme in college and with the Giants before he started to fall apart. Heron zone blocking scheme with the Patriots. Patrick played for Andrew Janocko in Chicago, so probably knows a little bit about what kind of system the Saints run. There's a very consistent theme going on here. And
Yeah.
Fuaga, who we'll talk about in a minute, quick feet. It was projected by scouts to be able to play either tackle or guard. So that tells you something about his versatility, and his fit for the scheme as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, if okay, so if you got we got Pete gone. Fuaga's been taking reps at left tackle. Today they showed at the OTAs Penning working on the right side, which is what my son was mentioning. Because I'm really excited to see him on the right side because I think he's a better fit on that side. Right tackle, right guard, we're looking at Ruiz, McCoy at center. Who? Yes, it is. That's Ricky Jackson. Let's see. Zooming in here. Autograph Ricky Jackson. Yeah, there you go. Autograph of Ricky Jackson. Hall of Fame 2010. If you're looking at these guys now as fast, mobile guys, who then is your left guard? Salvaderi is beginning snaps and OTAs, but you can't grade any of that because nice pass in the triple coverage there. 2 receivers in the same area too, even better. Great play design. Look at this. Oh my God. Anyway,
just like last year.
Yeah, I'm telling you, 4 people in about 2 feet of space. Anyway, if Salvaderi is playing left guard right now, you can't really judge anything because for these guys, there's no contact. There's no Aaron Stecker, future Saint. There's no no physicality at all. So it's hard to grade any of these guys. Who do you think is the best fit, though, for left guard based on the roster you've got right now?
If he's healthy, if he stays healthy, which is a big if, he's played 4 games in the last 3 years. I think it's Shane Lemieux. People forget how highly regarded Lemieux was coming out of Oregon. Just what a mobile, technically sound offensive lineman he is. But I think left guard is going to be, everybody's going to be watching the tackle positions, and I will too. But I think left guard is going to be a hotly contested battle all summer between Shane Lemieux, Lucas Patrick, and Nick Saldivari. And I was a big fan of Saldivari coming in, into the draft last year. A little bit very disappointed actually in the coaching or lack thereof that he got. And I've said this many times. I think the biggest strike against Doug Marrone, was the fact that none of those young players developed. Ruiz regressed as soon as Zach Strief left. Penning, we've talked about him week in and week out, no development there, and no development from Saldivari. So, you now have Rick Dennison, you now have John Benton, 2 guys renowned for their offensive lines at every stop they've been. So I think that we are going to see a big jump from Penning. I think we are going to see a big jump from Saldivari. Is it enough for Nick to earn that starting left guard spot? I wouldn't discount it. But again, if Lemieux stays healthy, he is exactly the type of offensive lineman that the Kubiak, Shanahan, Dennison system have favored over the years. Smaller, athletic, very technically sound, And a guy that can, a guy that can maul you in a phone booth, but is agile enough to get outside on screens and those outside traps and zone blocks.
Absolutely. That's all part of it. I'm really that's the part of training camp I'm really looking forward to seeing is how does this offensive line gel? What you're seeing right now is every job is open. Um, the Saints, Dennis Allen said it again today. It's about finding the 5 best guys and putting them out there in the best positions. There's a lot of newness to everything that's going on. I said in the teaser for this show, this is the first time that this team, this franchise, is learning a new offense in nearly 20 years, 18 years. There's so much that we have just kind of taken for granted based on the kind of players they've had, that, you would think, okay, these are the guys that are going to do it. No, we don't know. We don't know because we can't assume that this offense, this is the kind of guy you need at tackle. This is the kind of guy you need at guard. This is the kind of guy you need at center. So, yeah, I mean, it's just the tight ends even. What are you going to want out of your tight end? Is your tight end primarily going to be a blocker? Is he primarily going to be a pass catcher? I don't know. There's so much that's new about this. So with that said, it seems like that Kubiak is really excited about getting his hands on Taysom Hill and doing things with Taysom Hill. He's really excited about what he can do with a guy like Alvin Kamara. Who are the kind of players, obviously those two guys first come to mind, but who are the players you think have the best chance of really thriving in this new system?
Kamara for sure. I laugh anytime, and I've been asked a lot so far. And anytime somebody asks me, do you think Alvin Kamara is going to be a fit in Clint Kubiak's offense? And I laugh and I said, did you see Christian McCaffrey last year? Mm-hmm. Think Christian McCaffrey. And I've said it from day one. Kamara is a better receiver than a better pure receiver than Christian McCaffrey. Carmichael forgot that the last 3 or 4 years, but it's true. Taysom Hill is another obvious, candidate. And I love the reps that Taysom got at fullback. I expect to see more of that. Don't compare him to Kyle Juszczyk. He's not going to be a lead blocker. Taysom isn't. You're not going to be a primary lead blocker. You're going to see plays where it'll happen. But you don't want Taysom Hill to add 15 or 20 pounds because and he would do it because he's asked to be a lead blocker. You want Taysom Hill to be Taysom Hill and just try to expand on what he's able to do. The other players I'm really looking forward to seeing, again, everybody assumes Taysom is going to play the Deebo Samuel type of role. I think that role is going to, you'll see some of that. I think that role is going to go more to Rashid Shaheed. Deebo got a lot of carries out of the backfield, a lot of jet sweeps, things like that. We've seen how explosive Rashid Shaheed can be on jet sweeps as a rookie. We didn't see that last year. He was hardly used that way. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Kubiak uses Shaheed. I think Olave is going to continue to develop. Olave, if he has his head on straight, I think Chris is the type of receiver that will be able to put up numbers in any kind of system. So I don't think that he's a system-oriented guy. I think Chris Olave is just the kind of guy. You could, if he's healthy and has his head screwed on straight, you have a minimum of 1,100 yards out of him, minimum. And I don't think we've seen, Chris Olave hit his full potential yet. The obvious candidates: Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill. I'm really excited about Rashid Shaheed. I'm excited about Kendre Miller too. Miller has the same kind of skill sets that Kamara does. You hate to compare one player to another, but when you watch Miller run the football, when you watch Miller run routes out of the backfield, he is that kind of explosive explosive player. I think it was you that made the comparison early in the season before one of his many injuries that Miller looks like a faster version of Pierre Thomas. And if that's what the Saints can get out of Kendre Miller, they have themselves a hell of a number 2 back.
I'll tell you what, that Atlanta game was really fun to watch Miller play. I mean, it was just he bounced off of hits, which was great. He squeezed through tight holes and still made positive yardage. He was a fast runner. He was a tough runner. The screen pass that he caught, I think it was against Carolina. Just you got glimpses of Miller, enough for you to sit there and go, man, this guy could really be special if he can just stay healthy. And I think last year what hurt him was the fact that he was injured at the end of his college career, came back, got hurt again in training camp, and then kept trying to come back sooner than he was ready, just because he wanted to play in that game or in games his rookie season. And I think once he got that long break, and people were bringing up Tajay Spears, obviously, because he played at Tulane. But once he got that long break and he came back, he was a much, much better back, looked more like the back that we saw at TCU. So I'm really excited about him. I think these games that we were talking about against Washington, in Green Bay, in December, those to me are Miller games. Those are the kind of games where a guy like Miller and Taysom Hill, but a guy like Miller is going to really get a lot of tough yardage and be the kind of guy that makes Derek Carr a better quarterback. Derek Carr looked a lot better when he could run the football. He looked a lot better when he's healthy too, but he looked a lot better when they ran the football well. And I think that's the key. I mean, we have not talked about Derek Carr at all yet in this show, but Derek Carr is Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to do what Derek Carr does. Okay. He is going to be a facilitator. He's a guy that will win games if your defense plays well. There's a good running game, and he has the opportunity to make plays. But he's not a guy that's going to be able to take the Saints and put it on his back and carry them to a win. In many ways, this is why I pulled this clip, this comment up, Flavor Dave. In many ways, he's almost like Matt Schaub, with the Houston Texans. Schaub was a lot more effective when he had what was the running back? We were talking about him last week.
Arian Foster.
He almost signed with the Saints. Arian Foster. When he had Arian Foster running the football, he became a much more effective quarterback than he was without Foster, without a running game, and people could just tee off on him. I mean, that's Derek Carr. So, I'm not worried about Carr so much as I'm more worried about the offensive system, being able to run the football, being able to protect him. All the other parts turn out well, Carr's going to be fine. He's good enough to win. He's not an elite. He's an average starting quarterback. And we can say the same thing about Atlanta with Cousins. That's his older twin. I mean, basically. In fact, the stats are almost eerily identical.
And there's a reason for that. I mean, the Shanahan Kubiak system. Yes, Mike Shanahan had Steve Young. Mike Shanahan had John Elway. But this system has also made average or slightly below average quarterbacks have Pro Bowl caliber seasons. Jake Plummer, Brian Griese. You mentioned Matt Schaub, Kirk Cousins in Washington. Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, with Clinton, Gary Kubiak. I feel like I'm missing some. Well, Brock Purdy, a 7th-round pick. It flourished right away. And I'm not saying that Brock Purdy is a bum, far from it, but he flourished right away. That's so rare for a 7th-round pick, like unheard of. Tom Brady didn't do that as a rookie. People forget that. Tom Brady wasn't a rookie when he saw the field. Brock Purdy accomplished what he did as a rookie. But there's a recurring theme, too. All those guys, they had running backs like Ricky Waters, Terrell Davis, Landis Gary, 1,000-yard rusher. Mike Anderson, 1,000-yard rusher. We mentioned Arian Foster. I may have mentioned, may not have Tatum Bell, Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. So again, Christian McCaffrey last year. There's a recurring theme. You have to be able to run the ball. That sets up your play action. That sets up your bootlegs. Your receivers are able to be schemed open that way. You need to have a pass catching tight end. That's another must for this system. But I think Juwan Johnson will fill that part of the role. A lot of moving parts, and they'll add the complexities as Carr and the rest of these guys start to feel comfortable. But I agree with you. I think I think this system could be tailor-made for Carr to have a potentially career season if they can run the football.
Yeah. I mean, people forget that Cousins had that 4,000, almost a 5,000-yard season that one year in Minnesota. He threw like 30 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions or 7 interceptions, something ridiculous like that. And they still refer to him as mediocre, as average, as, that's Cousins, that's the measuring stick for average quarterbacks. And it's just funny because we are now so used to having these superstar quarterbacks that just make these spectacular plays. And we had one for 16 years here that when we now see an average quarterback, we're like, oh God, he sucks. And, you watch these old games, like I've been watching, and granted the game is different now. I get it. But you watch these old games, Bobby Hebert was average. He was a less accurate version of Derek Carr. If Derek Carr's last name was Arsenault and he came from Port-au-Shanghai or Dulac and played at UL or Louisiana Monroe or God forbid LSU, fans would cut him a lot more slack. But he's not from those areas, and he has an off-putting personality, and I get all that. But as far as talent-wise, that's why he's been in the league for 10 years. That's why he's thrown for almost 40,000 yards. That's why he's already ranked 7th on the Saints' all-time passing yardage, and is like 3 yards behind Steve Walsh, who is here for 3 seasons. I mean, it's 4 seasons, 90, 91, 92, 93. He left in 90 after the end of 93. So 4 seasons, and you almost have the stats that Steve Walsh had, and Steve Walsh is 6th or no, 8th on the all-time Saints passing record. It just reminds you how bad the Saints quarterback carousel has been throughout the history. But
John Butler, you ought to have Alan and I do a Mount Rushmore Saints quarterbacks and not allow us to use Drew Brees.
Just trying to put together a top 10 list of Saints quarterbacks I can't do it. I really can't do it. I can make an argument for 7. And 7 is tough because here's your top 5, and we'll take Carr out of the equation. But here's your top 5. You got Breeze, Brooks, Manning, Hebert, depending on who you grew up with. So that's Everett's 5. Okay, so that's your 5. So now you're looking at so where does 6 fall? Jeff Blake. Does Kenny Stabler fall in there somewhere? Because now you're going into Dave Wilson, Steve Walsh. I mean, Billy Kilmer. You're
Forte
really,
even.
yeah, you're really scraping the bottom because the guys they're not there. Oh yeah, Mike Buck. Mike Buck made his living off of one pass, and I have looked for that pass. I know the game, but I have looked for that clip forever. It's 1991, Saints versus Atlanta on ESPN. I can tell you what happened to get him out there. Steve Walsh fakes an injury to his hand. Mike Buck comes in there with a chin strap that didn't even fit his helmet. And he hauls back and throws his pass like 60 yards in the air. And the crowd went crazy. Buck's helmet is like half off his head because the chin strap doesn't fit. It's hilarious. And I think he was still chewing gum because he was on the sideline. And he goes back to the sideline. That's it. But Mike Buck's entire career, one pass, because then he started for the Saints for a half versus the Eagles, and it was so bad and so ugly. You never wanted to see that man on the field ever again. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's gruesome. Bobby Douglas, Bobby Scott, Billy Joe Hobart, Billy Joe Tolliver. We had the Bobbies and the Billy Joes on this team, you know. Willie Snead, I tell you what, Willie Snead, if he completes that pass to Kamara against the Vikings in the playoff game, the Minneapolis Miracle never happens.
Yep.
Or if it happens, who gives a fuck? You lost.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he did, and that's probably being generous. He just sat there. He just sat and dipped the whole time. I mean, I don't think he knew how to read a playbook. But yeah, that play kills me. It really does, and I agree totally with Troy Aikman when he said when that happened. He says he probably completed that pass all week in practice. Every time they ran that play, he completed that pass. So I mean, yeah, that play just kills me because that's the play more than the Minneapolis Miracle that I'm just like, man, we were that close. We were that close. You complete that pass, Kamara's walking in the end zone. Okay, so we've talked about the offense getting better. How about the defense? We don't talk a whole heck of a lot about the defense, but there's a lot of question marks on the defense. One of the things that take, again, shorts and shells, Willie Gay looks faster, looks like one of the best linebackers the Saints have brought in since when they brought in Demario Davis.
Yeah.
What do you see happening with this defense? Where do you see, we talked about a little bit about the secondary, but where do you see who you're starting front four are? Your linebackers, do we do two linebackers? Do we do three linebackers? Is it a big nickel? How do you see this defense kind of coming together?
I think the front four, that's an easy call, assuming everybody is healthy. It's still going to be Cam, Shepard, Brissy, Granderson. Chase Young is going to be the first edge in the game in passing situations. I personally look for a big jump from Isaiah Foskey. I know I loved the guy last year. That might be why. I think that's a no-brainer up front. Anything you get out of Peyton Turner going to be gravy. Don't expect high things. To no passing. He's a rotational guy. He is what he is. Same with Colin Saunders. You hope for a bounce back from Cam. The linebackers is where it gets extremely interesting. Demario is going to be Demario, but folks, I said it at the time. I said it before free agency when I said that one of the guys that I was highlighting to keep an eye on, and I was hoping the Saints would be Willie Gay. When it turned out that to happen, I was ecstatic. You guys are going to see a very athletic linebacker. Think Demario Davis when he first got here. A slightly less physical version, but a faster version. He's the kind of guy that's going to run down Jaden Daniels when he breaks containment. He is the kind of guy that's going to allow the Saints to put to line up in a base 4-3 and still maintain their athleticism and their scheme versatility. Pete Werner. Pete Werner has always been a solid in the box guy, downhill guy. Go get the run. If you have to drop him into coverage, God help you if it's anything more than a short zone, because it's not like Werner doesn't have the awareness. It's not that he doesn't have the straight line speed. He just doesn't have the sideline to sideline agility. That's what Willie Gay brings, and that's going to transform this whole front seven. You guys watch. And the Saints secondary, especially that cornerback unit. You can't name me a better cornerback unit in the NFL. I don't care who you are. If Kool-Aid McKinstry is anything like close to what we think it could be, that just gives you a literally an almost unfair foursome of cornerbacks. Marshawn, he's going to be back. You hope he stays healthy. Paulson Adebo coming off a breakthrough year. Alontae Taylor, sophomore, bump in the road is all I think it was, bump in a road. They're going to use him more around the formation, more as an outside corner. With McKinstry, on the team, you're going to see McKinstry take more of the slot snaps that Alontae got last year, which is going to eliminate the weakest part of Alontae's game. Safety spot concerns me a little bit, but I love the signing of Will Harris. I think that patches up some of the depth concerns that I had at safety, especially if Jordan Howden doesn't develop as it looks like he should. But yeah, you hope that DeMario and Cam and Tyrann Mathieu, for that matter, can stave off Father Time for one more year. If they can, then this has the makings of an elite defense. But you also need to rush the passer. You also need to rush the passer.
Yes. Do you see a scenario where Alontae Taylor kind of plays some safety, say a single high safety, or kind of like a like you said, Kool-Aid McKinstry as the big nickel or the slot guy, moving him more as a safety with, say, like almost even with. Okay, it's hard for me to explain this defense, but you basically would have Kool-Aid in the slot, but you would have Howden off the field for coverage. You've got, you may have Tyrann Mathieu a single high, and you kind of got Taylor like close to the box to play the run, but really more a cover guy. Can you see that kind of scenario being played out where you've got more coverage safeties than a run stuffing safety?
Yeah, I sure can. People forget. They like to criticize Alontae Taylor for some of his coverage struggles last year in the slot, but Alontae Taylor was a hell of a blitzer from that spot too. So yeah, I could see them lining up that way, and bringing Taylor in, on a blitz, or mixing it up, kind of a matchup zone kind of thing, if you want to use a basketball terminology, where Taylor is lined up kind of as an off-ball slot. But he'll really jet off to the side, to the outside right at the snap, and take one of the outside guys while another blitzer comes in, from another direction. I don't know that we'll see Alontae too much in a single high safety role, early on, because if he's used at safety, he's still going to be learning the position. Too high safety with a real instinctive guy like Tyrann Mathieu back there with him. I can see that. As a matter of fact, I expect to see it. Maybe not so much in minicamp or OTAs, excuse me, because you got mostly 7-on-7s. So you're not gonna get much safety work much quality safety work that way. But once you get into June minicamp, and especially into training camp, you need to get McKinstry signed as soon as possible so you could work him into your defensive schemes. But once that happens, I expect Alontae Taylor to see some work in different safety roles.
Absolutely. Well, and that was where I was going with this, because you mentioned it. Here you have you've got two corners. If you were to take, say, you were going to take Howden off the field, and you put Taylor in his spot, so the quarterback identifies that as a corner, not as a safety.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking coverage, and you send him on a blitz, I think that would be really interesting, because it's a moment of confusion for a quarterback because he's looking at coverage matchups, who's got who, what's going on, and you use him as a safety, and he's playing the safety position. I think that's really intriguing. So I just I think there's just a lot of moving parts. And again, like the offense, things that we thought this is the way it was going to be. Allen will have to come up with unique formations, unique concepts to just take advantage of the athleticism of the players he has. And it won't fit stereotypical roles. So I'm curious how this is going to play out. I think that is what's going to be interesting to see in this offense and defense. The kicking game, we hardly ever talk about the kicking game, but I'm kind of disappointed that the punter is not really going to get a big challenge. They brought another Australian punter. This special teams coach, and I got to give him credit. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing, but they seem to prefer not somebody who flips the field so much as somebody who pins players back in the corner with as little to no return. And that seems to be the focus of their special teams. When you kick the ball, we don't want to return. So that's how we're going to play this. And it doesn't you don't have to boot it into the end zone. You don't have to pin them inside the 5, but you're going to pin them. It may be at the 30, maybe at the 25, but we feel good that we're not giving up cheap yardage. Is that how you see this?
Yeah, and that's fine until your offense goes 3 and out from their own 15-yard line. Man, we were spoiled by Thomas Morstead because you had a guy that could do both. A guy that could flip the field and a guy that could pin your opponent very consistently inside, if not inside their own 5-yard line, then definitely inside the 10. Now, that's where the Saints' strength was last year. Pinning guys deep. That's what lost. Man, I'm forgetting the last two punters' names. Last year's guy and the year before.
Gillikin and Headley was last year, but Gillikin was the guy.
Okay, Headley's net average was absolutely awful, but he did do a nice job of pinning teams inside the 15, inside the 12. That's the reason he beat out Gillikin, because that's where Gillikin was poor. Gillikin could flip the field. If you could have combined those two, then and again, that's why we were spoiled for so long. For what? Morstead was with us for what, 12 years, something like that.
Since 2009, yeah.
I mean, you got spoiled. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that's why I wanted that Iowa punter so badly, because I'm like, that's a young Thomas Morstead. That's the kind of guy I want punting for the Saints, because that's the guy I felt like was going to get to the booming hang times, but also he would drop those punts like a pitching wedge. I mean, the ball would just die right there on the spot. I have to laugh. The Jets-Giants game last year was terrible.
Yeah.
But, man, what made the highlights? All of Morstead's punts where he was dropping the ball and the ball would hit the grass and die right there. There's no roll. There's no bouncing around. The ball would just die right there. And it was just amazing to watch. And we just don't get that. We get it's a different kind of game, and the same with kickoff rules. I don't know how this is going to play out with the kickoffs. we were talking about Shaheed earlier being used more in the offense. There's a speedster they brought in as an undrafted free agent who they think maybe can be the kick returner with these new kick return rules where you can get a smaller guy because he's not going to get killed. I can't think of the guy's name. I just drew a blank on him. But do you can you see them getting a special undrafted free agent, maybe as a special teams guy, as a kick returner, or something like that? We have one. I think it was who was it? I think it was Flavor Dave. It might have been. Hemisphere. Who was it here? Flavor Dave brought up Kyle Hergel, undrafted free agent lineman. The Baylor tight end we've talked about before, but I can't think of the kick. Let me look up this guy real quick.
Jermaine, you're talking Jermaine Jackson? Jermaine Jackson?
Not Jermaine. I don't know if it's Jermaine Jackson.
The three undrafted receivers they brought in were Jermaine Jackson, Kyle Sheets, and Mason Tipton.
Who was the guy? Who was the guy that was supposed to be the big, the really small, fast guy?
This year.
Let me look.
Jermaine Jackson from Idaho.
Not Dalen Hook. Okay, it's got to be him then. All right. Golly, I almost want Jermaine Jackson to make the team just so I can go in with all my Jackson 5 jokes. The less talented Jackson. I mean, yeah, I got plenty of those. But anyway, yeah, so that's a guy I'm really curious to see if he becomes the kick returner. How does that play out? We didn't even talk about really the receiver that we brought in from Miami. What his role in this team is going to be, because people are talking about Bub Means. People are talking about, of course, the big three, A.T. Perry being the slot guy. But where do you see? It's not Curtis Martin, but it's God dang,
Cedric Wilson.
Cedric Wilson. Thank you. I could picture him. I could picture his face. I could picture everything, and then Curtis Martin just kept coming to mind. I'm like, it's not Curtis Martin. Cedric Wilson. Where do you see a guy like him fitting in this offense, or do you see him fitting in this offense?
I do see his fit in this offense, and I know the Saints like him for this offense. All the other guys they signed in free agency, that we've talked about, Shane Lemieux, Will Harris, Kalike Hudson, Willie Gay, Chase Young, they're all signed to one-year deals except one guy, Cedric Wilson. They signed to a 2-year deal. That tells me something. And people forget how well Cedric was developing in Dallas. By his 3rd year there, he was a bona fide number 3 receiver, a guy that could stretch the field. And I'm writing about this, about him and a couple other veterans to watch through OTAs and this summer, under the radar kind of additions. Cedric Wilson's a guy that can stretch the field. He needs route refinement. For his intermediate patterns, but he's also the kind of guy that could take a short pass and get you a lot of extra yards after the catch. I know everybody is assuming A.T. Perry is going to be the 3rd receiver, including myself. Do not be surprised if Cedric Wilson beats him out for that job. I do think Cedric has a quality fit in this system, even if he's a number 4 guy. I think he's going to push Perry to be better, to progress in his 2nd year, and he is going to be another guy. Cedric Wilson is to be able to take the top off of defense. He's not. No, is he going to replace Michael Thomas? No, because you're talking an apples and oranges kind of difference player. But
Mhm.
Cedric can take the top off of a defense, while your guys like Chris Olave and A.T. Perry can work the underneath routes. And those guys are, again, they're not as physical as Michael Thomas was, but it's a different kind, different kind of yards after the catch, because they have underrated route precision. They'll be able to make the catch and pick up yards after the catch. And the main reason why is because you'll have a guy like Cedric Wilson to take the top off. I think Cedric Wilson has a very specific fit in this offense, and I think Clint Kubiak and the franchise sees it that way, because that's why they signed him to a 2-year contract.
Yeah, and there's Pierre Thomas right there. Speaking of Pierre, one of the things that we were talking about earlier is you kind of have to change your ideas about the way the offense runs. In the West Coast offense, in the Sean Payton offense, the X receiver was the most important guy. That was Marcus Colston for so long. That was Michael Thomas for so long. Because that's what the offense went through. And the number 2 guy, number 3 guys were kind of secondary targets. When Colston got hurt, Lance Moore got moved to the X. Lance Moore had his 1,000-yard season. Well, it's not going to be that way now. It's probably going to be a lot more combination stuff. That's not to say there won't be an X receiver, because there will be. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be Chris Olave who is going to get the bulk of the catches, just like he did last year in Pete Carmichael's offense. But I think situational stuff, they're going to be moving guys around. There'll be a lot more targets spread around, kind of like what you saw with the 49ers, where there wasn't one receiver that was going to be the guy. There wasn't a Jerry Rice receiver. There wasn't a Terrell Owens receiver. They spread the ball around. Deebo Samuel got a lot of touches. The tight end, George Kittle, got a lot of touches. They threw the ball a lot to McCaffrey. They threw the ball, to Brandon Ayuk. People wanted a guy Jennings. I wanted a guy Jennings, and he was just a guy. So, I think that's what you're going to see more of this year. So, a guy like Wilson, a guy like Perry, Rashid Shaheed, they're all going to get their touches, and it's going to be a spread the ball offense. The only bad part about it is, you remember, for those of you who play fantasy football, Mike Shanahan, and Gary Kubiak, you never knew who was going to be the running back of the day.
Yep.
There were games where Orlando's Gary got 100 yards. There were games that Mike Anderson got 100 yards. With the Texans, Arian Foster, yeah. But outside Arian Foster, you also saw Ben Tate. You saw some other guys get big yardage. So, that's where I think, it's something's going to be, it's going to be a level of adjustment for fans. And I think if the pieces kind of fall into place right away, I think this team will really, it'll thrive. But we have to survive this first 7 weeks. Last thing of the night, what do you have going on tomorrow night in the Bayou Blitz?
Day 2 of OTAs. Day 2 of the first session of OTAs. Remember, there's 2 this month, folks. We'll see if Spencer Rattler can regain his Hall of Fame status after only going 4 of 8 today. We'll talk. We touched. Sorry, I couldn't resist. We touched on it a little bit tonight. We'll talk about Dallin Holker, the free agent tight end from Colorado State. Examine Holker and some other undrafted guys, whether they have a realistic chance of making the team, or whether they're just more developmental guys. There's a guy every single year, that is a fan favorite before the pads even go on for real. This year, that guy's Dallin Holker. John Hendricks has fallen into that hypnotism already. He's calling it the Holker Hive. Knock it off. For Christ's sake, knock it off. But I mean, Will and I wrote a piece on Holker this morning. Not coincidentally, just before OTAs actually kicked off. But we'll talk about him. And some other guys. We'll talk about a few veterans. We talked about Cedric Wilson tonight, but we'll talk about a few other veterans that the people aren't talking about that could be sneaky good additions if this team is going to rebuild their depth. Something that has been chipped away at really since 2020.
And it's funny you mentioned Dolan Hawker, because it feels like Spencer Rattler is the before the pads even come on, he is like the camp darling. He is the guy. I mean, you got people out there on X talking about him taking Carr's job in training camp and things like that. And that's insane. That's insane. Because
Rattler Holker is the new Breeze Graham. You didn't know this?
Oh my God. It's insane. Do you know how many Rattlers I've seen come through this franchise in my 50 years of watching them, or whatever, God knows what number it is? I mean, I have seen it. I have seen it over and over and over again. My God, and it'll be great until he's out there and he throws that pass. We talk about Mike Buck, who made a career off of one pass. I'm telling you, there were guys who wanted Ian Book to start, during the Andy Dalton stuff until you saw him out there. Guys are always incredibly popular on the bench, and then they start, and you realize why they were on the bench. And they weren't very good, and this guy's got talent. I'm not going to deny that, but man, he's got a long way to go before he's an NFL quarterback. A very long way to go. They're all talented, but you're just not. It's more than just throwing a ball. There's the mental part of the game, understanding all that stuff. There's so much of that. The guy wasn't even a stud quarterback in college. He got beat out at Oklahoma. He had to go down to South Carolina. And he had some nice games, but there was some stuff like, holy crap, how's this guy even going to be drafted? So, it's just, I'm sorry. I kept you on 10 minutes longer for that rant, but it's so bad. It really is. And I like the kid. I want him to be successful, but man, pump the brakes. He may not even beat out Jake Haener. I mean, that's really what. Well, and it's not that Jake Haener is that much more talented, but Jake Haener might have a better mental game. There's a reason why guys that you go, and how the hell is he still in the league, have been around for so long because of the mental game. So anyway, back off. I'll lay off on that. It's just I read X way too much, and that hive too. And I get it. It's because you hate Carr, and you want Carr off your TV. I get that, but Rattler's not your guy right now.
Hey, we got the Holker hive and the Rattler's nest, and I'm sick of both of them.
Oh man, it's just and I honestly, I think if we would have had Pratt, it would be just as bad. If we would have drafted Pratt from Tulane. Oh, we got a local kid finally, that kind of things. So anyway, meantime, guys, thank y'all for sticking with us tonight. OTAs until the end of the month. I think the second weekend of June is the mini camp, and then 6 weeks off, then training camp at the end of July. Can't believe it. I cannot believe it already. Anyway, check out the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night, correct? It's tomorrow night. Okay. Yeah. Check out the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. And until then, we'll see you next week on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Night.